Do you have like your own sort of like dream scenario for how this might play out for them?
I find this question so hard to answer.
Sure. Well, you also probably don't want to give anything away. I don't even know if you know anything though.
I do know, actually. I did ask them. I went in and I asked them what the trajectory.
You did? I never asked. I kind of like
You are brave. Tell us everything.
Yeah, what happens? Is it hot between Naomi? No, I'm just kidding.
Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley from Variety. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the stars of The Handmaid's Tale, Yvonne Strahovski and Dowd and Ever Carradine. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors. So I actually like to go back to the beginning and ask each of you, how did you get your SAG card? What was the job that brought that valuable card to you? And I think we'll start with Ever, because she looks like she might remember first. I don't know.
Did I have like a lightning bolt moment?
Yeah, a little bit.
I got my SAG card. I went to college in Portland, Oregon, and at the time in the late 90s, there was a television show up there, and there were some films that came up there, and I got Taft-Hartley'd on my first film there, a film called Foxfire, starring someone called Angelina Jolie. And then I did a TV show and got a SAG card. And I had to ask my agent at the time for the money to pay the dues. And then I was going to pay them back once I did the job, because I was a junior in college.
Well, sorry, I'm from Oregon. So, of course, I'm curious what college you went to.
I went to Lewis and Clark College, and the show was called Nowhere Man. My agent at the time gave me the like $1,200 or whatever it costs to join SAG. And then after I got paid for the job, my agent let me pay them back.
He let you pay them. That was nice.
He allowed me to reimburse him the 12, or maybe it was 900. I don't know how much it was in the 90s, but it was more than this college student had.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yvonne, for you?
I don't even quite remember. I think it must have been the Chuck series that I was on, because I got here, and then the next thing you know, it was like 3 days later, I had got the job after like doing this whirlwind meetup tour with all the creators and the director, and then that was it. So I'm sure it was that job. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been allowed to do that job, right?
And for you?
And this is embarrassing because I remember vague details, but nothing that would clarify this for all of us. I don't know. I know that it was a very long time ago. How's that?
Did you, forgive me for not knowing, did you start off in theater before doing in film? Yes. That's what I thought. Okay. Do you remember the first play you did? I'd be curious to know.
Oh God, please don't ask me questions like that. No, I don't. I don't remember the first play. Oh, I do. A Different Moon.
Oh, okay.
Called, and I love the play. I did it again years later. Remains a favorite of mine for sure.
Sorry, in some ways this is very unfair because I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, and I'm asking you all to dig way back. But but thank you. That's great. So again, congratulations on The Handmaid's Tale. We find ourselves, coming off of the 5th season, and it's just astounding to think about how much has happened. I'd love to kind of know, to hear from each of you about what it's been like to see your character change and evolve over time. Do you ever think back about where they started and look at where they've ended up most recently and think about that arc? Yvonne?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah. I just actually came across the clip yesterday of I think it was the trailer for season 5. And I just watched it and I was like, oh, and it had a little flashback to that very first scene that I ever shot in the pilot, where I tell Offred, if you make trouble, I will make trouble back. And like little baby face. And I thought, oh my God, it was so many years ago, wasn't it? That we started the show. And so much has happened since then. But yeah, the evolution I mean, at least for Serena, I think has been extraordinary. I have been on this journey with her this whole time. It's one of the greatest characters I've ever been allowed to play. So it's been such a journey, and I think season 5 especially was special for me, and all the things that I got to explore with the character. You know, the thing that she had always wanted was the baby, and how close to home in my heart that was also personally. So yeah, I mean, it's been a really powerful and an intensely extraordinary journey. All the kind of emotions and things we got to portray, or I got to do with that character so far.
And Anne, what about for you? What has Aunt Lydia meant, not only for yourself, your career, but for your life?
Oh, I'm so proud of her for what she's done this season. The writing has been phenomenal, and that she's actually beginning to take the blinders off, and for the wall to start to crumble is incredibly satisfying. And I just thought this season was so powerful in that regard for her. Just realizing too, I've said this before, but the fact that she loves Janine. When you love someone as though she were my daughter, and she is my daughter, and to realize you might lose her, and what that does to Lydia, brings her literally to her knees, begging for forgiveness and promising to change. That's a very powerful journey, and I'm very grateful for the writing and the chance to participate. As Yvonne said, being allowed to play such an extraordinary character is just a great privilege.
And Ever, for you?
I mean, I think that I just think of like season 5 for Naomi has been her entire world changed when Warren died, and the fact that the writers were able to put her back on her feet again the way that they did it is just, it's like you guys said, it's just, this job has been the gift that keeps on giving. But as far as like her overall arc of the entire series, I think it's interesting to me being on set and being around everybody and looking at Gilead. And like, I like to think of the kind of collective toll that Gilead has taken on each of these characters. And over these 5 seasons, we've watched it sort of, chip away at their humanity, but also you can see what they're longing for from the time before. Does that make sense? Like, you can see that they sort of long for the freedoms that they helped destroy.
That's interesting.
Do you know what I mean, though, Anne? Like, I just think that
I do.
It's a misery of their own making, and they're all in it together. And now they have to sort of figure out how to define it in a way where they can find happiness.
And the notion of what were they thinking?
What were they thinking?
Did they really think that women would get half a shot at any kind of a, free life? Oh, my God.
It is fascinating because the 3 of you, your characters really began as true believers, and seeing that loyalty start to fray slightly has just been fascinating to watch. Fun is not the right word, but to get to play those cracks.
Fun is the right word.
Okay, I think fun is exactly it. Yvonne and I have no fun at all, ever.
Last time Ever and I, well, not last time, but we were just reminiscing on, I had to leave the room. I was in stitches, very inappropriately, a very inappropriate scene. There was no reason for me to be in stitches, but here I was. It was one of those church giggle moments.
Yep. Or the baby pound day. That was another really hilarious day.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There was Ever and I had a moment too where we were going up and down the corridor when we were doing the flashback scene. Oh my gosh. And I was in tears. I was in legitimate tears that day at the horror of what we were setting up. It was the day, Anne, where they had all the children behind the glass walls, and we're sort of walking down the hallway and we're like, could you see that one at your house? I don't know if I like that. I don't know. Is that one cute?
Yeah. And we're both mothers and we're just like,
oh my goodness.
We actually couldn't deal with it. And it was like, and Eva was directing as well. And we just really struggled. And in the end, we tried to make ourselves laugh. And I think, I don't know, you and I were just making up a silly song or something.
We rapped. I think there was a lot of rapping.
Yeah, but just to like force ourselves to not bawl through the scene, because it wasn't a scene that was appropriate for either one of our characters to be crying. So
we were shopping for children. It was like going to Walmart. Oh, it makes me emotional now to think about it. It was awful.
Yeah. So there are moments of fun, but there are also moments where the scene is so powerful and reflective of, things that reminds us of what's going on in the real world sometimes, that it really is difficult.
And also the set to me is so immersive. It's so every which way you look, you feel you really are there. And so as an actor, for me, if I can just be present and be in the shoes and be with Yvonne, it all kind of takes care of itself. So I think that those moments in between allowed at least myself to kind of be present in the scene. Like I had to shake it up. I couldn't live there. I could only be there between action and cut.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to ask about that because obviously you're dealing with some heavy material. Do you all have ways to kind of decompress at the end of the day? Or I don't know if you're the kind of actors that take your work home with you, or if you're able to sort of shut that off if you have any, helpful suggestions.
Well, the fortunate thing is that, it's a long day and we're quite tired at the end of it. I don't speak for my colleagues, but most of the time, the reason we can go home and relax is because we don't take the consequences home with us. That's the rule. If I can put it that way, if we didn't make believe these circumstances, we couldn't really do them. Ever and Yvonne were just discussing scenes that bring it way too close, and very difficult to just see from a distance. But except for, and when scenes go well, meaning when you've played them in the way that you had hoped to, and it works, it's a very satisfying feeling to go home and let it go. The scene in which Lydia was begging for forgiveness, basically, and staring at the possible death of someone she loved so much. That was a very, I don't know how to say it. I was very happy to go home with it and let it go, because everything I had to say and do and hope for it was already in that room. So there was nothing left to hold on to, if that makes the slightest sense. Anyway, I'm sure there's a clearer way to say it.
And that was beautiful. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Even though you're acting, I mean, when you're putting yourself in these situations, sometimes your body doesn't know the difference. So you might not even be aware of, how much you're holding on to this. Ever and Yvonne, is it similar for you?
I mean, I think Anne put it so beautifully. It's true. Like, it is. I mean, I think it's not common that we're that affected by a scene. I mean, I speak for myself, but there's certainly been a handful of moments where it has. But for the most part, it is a moment where, you've spent so much energy and we're all so invested in these characters and invested in the quality of this show and creating these interesting scenes that it is very satisfying once we're done with it. I think the only time that I was concerned about what you just said is when I was actually pregnant in real life and I was then coming to work, having to play this woman who has so much pent up emotion and is just, so much ugly emotion, that's inside of her. And I, there's a lot of screaming, obviously, there's a lot of rage, there's a lot of crying. And I remember thinking, my gosh, like, I really hope this doesn't affect what I'm doing in real life. And this might sound silly, but I ended up every day, I decided that I was going to imagine a bubble around my belly, around the growing baby inside of me. And and the bubble, you couldn't penetrate it with anything. It was a safety bubble. There was no emotion. There was no anything that was going to come to the baby. And I just sort of had this dialogue with my own body, because I think I was a little bit terrified at first, because I remember there was that scene at the lake house with Joe, and he had to put me against the wall, and
you were pregnant, all of that.
I was pregnant, the whole thing, this huge argument that we had. And I mean, and that was like, I mean, most of Serena's scenes are a little bit, rough in terms of her, anger issues and stuff. So it was, I was quite protective over that, just kind of internally.
That makes so much sense. Wow.
Done it. I think, I've had a lot of practice now. So I'm good,
You sort of referenced earlier about how this series from the very start has been kind of, eerily accurate and prescient in so many ways. I'm curious, how do you sort of find that tone where you can balance how powerful and affecting these stories are with also, being entertainment? I assume a lot of it has to do with the scripts, but is it something you also find on set, your directors help you with? Maybe sometimes it's found in editing. Do you try scenes different ways, or is there a pretty consistent tone?
We tend to play, I feel like. I mean, we've always kind of tried the scene mostly, I think, in various different ways. I mean, it's kind of fun. I mean, it's not kind of, it is fun. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Focusing less on how relevant the show is. I mean, I mean, obviously that comes up in our discussions or whatever amongst ourselves, but when I'm doing this character in the scene, it really just is about that and the bubble. And
yes, I agree.
Coming
yeah, and don't you also feel like it's been time now? It's all had time. We've lived there for we've lived in Gilead for a long time.
Yeah. It has to come from the characters here, and that's where the show lives in everyone. I think that's where we created it.
It is a shock to see how the world, I'll say just America for the moment, the desire to control women, that's just what is the word?
Insane.
Yeah, insane. And is this really happening? But as Yvonne said, the focus is on our story, and we pretty much stay there. And because of that, it's a whole lot of fun, lots of times.
Do you remember, Anne, in season 1, the scene on the bridge when Maddie takes the baby and is standing?
I do.
Do you remember? And we shot one direction one day and then the next direction the next day. And I don't know if you remember this, but one direction was the last day of Obama's presidency, and the next direction was the first day of the Trump presidency.
Oh, dear.
Wow.
Oh, dear.
And that was season 1. So
that was shocking that happened. Shocking.
Amazing.
Shocking.
I remember texting Lizzie because I woke up, I went to bed the night before early because I couldn't stand to listen anymore to what was happening with the results of the election. And I got up in the morning and I opened the door, and there was the New York Times announcing that Trump had won. And I texted Lizzie and I said, "What are we going to do?" And she wrote back, "Don't let the bastards grind you down." And perfect. She said it in the proper, is it Latin, the original?
Yeah.
Which is the only answer you can give at the moment. But, oh boy, that was a shock.
Remember, we marched, Yvonne. We all met in my hotel room and we made signs and we did the
Women's March
up there. And I've marched a lot in Canada. I have to say, every time I get to Toronto, I feel like something has broken in America. It's happened so many times.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about something you referenced earlier, the rest of this amazing cast. In season 5, Naomi married Commander Lawrence. Ever, I'm curious for you, what's it like, first of all, when you're told, you're going to be sharing these amazing scenes with Bradley Whitford, and then what's it like to do them? I
mean, the whole thing was so surreal. It was Well, I found out from our incredible costume designer. She was like, I'm going to have to fit you for a wedding dress. And I was like, what are you talking about? I think we were filming the scene when Stephen died. And I thought that was probably it for Naomi in season 5. And then she said, no, I think you're marrying Brad. And so I sort of snooped around and I saw Brad at work the next day when he was shooting my husband. And he kind of had a little twinkle in his eye. And I was like, did you pick the blonde one? And he said, mm-hmm. So it was amazing and surreal. And then when I got that script, the proposal scene, Anne, was that the best, most fun?
Yes, it was. It was.
It was so, it was just, and I remember Lizzie said, she was like, I hope they gave Brad, because, you know, Brad was also directing that day. She's like, I hope they gave him 9 hours to shoot that, because there's no way like he's going to get through it if he gets to be funny and get to be the director.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. I don't know. I can't even, I don't know. Just that day, that proposal day, watching Anne and Brad try to stumble through proposing to Naomi was just like eating an ice cream sundae. And all I had to do was just sort of be still and observe them and let the rest happen naturally, because you guys were just insane. You were crazy.
And then you ask in a straight voice, is this a marriage proposal? However you said it.
What's happening? Mm-hmm.
What is going on? It was very, very funny.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that's your question, but
yeah. And Yvonne, Serena and June once again really went at it this season. With June, sort of the dynamics have shifted so much. What's it like to play opposite Elizabeth Moss with this new dynamic? I mean, is it ever challenging? Because, you know, as outside of your characters, you probably really love each other, but you're really going at it on screen.
You know, the dynamic is something we've always talked about before each season, I think, because it would be easy to fall into a kind of, you know, like, I hate you, well, I hate you back too, you know, kind of thing without the nuance. So we've really wanted, I mean, the writing is extraordinary and it is on paper, but it's up to us to breathe that life into it and create the sort of the energetic nuances between ourselves. So we have often sort of talked about the layers. You know, it kind of, I guess in a nutshell, you could say that at the beginning it was kind of a bit more bullshit between them. And then as the seasons go on, there's less and less opportunity for them to bullshit each other. They know each other so well that by the time we shot this season, they have to be so real with one another, you know, both in what they're saying and energetically how they're delivering these lines to one another and how they interact with each other, if that makes any sense. There's just, it's kind of, in season 5, it feels the most stripped between them. It's almost like they're a couple that's been married for 45 years and you just can't, you can't lie. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing to hide behind. So I think that was definitely a driving force for me in the season of sort of where to come from as a baseline, you know?
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier about Bradley directing, and Elizabeth directed episodes as well. I'm curious for all of you, why do you think actors make such great directors? And what is it like to have your scene partner directing?
Well, I'll tell you, my time with Bradley was very short. He was terrific, but it was very short. Lizzie, it doesn't come better. And that woman was born to direct. And she knows those characters so well, lived with them, knows them intimately. And it's the ideas that come from her are just so good, and things you haven't thought of. It's really a tremendous pleasure. It's a wonderful feeling to be directed by her, and also Bradley. As I said, just a brief period with him. I think, as to your question, actors being aware of who characters are and what is actually going on between them is hugely important. And I think actors will bring that to any directing situation. As to having ability to tell a story visually, I have no idea what that is like. It's not a skill I possess. And I have zero desire to direct because I think that's essential.
No, and just to piggyback that, I think that when actors direct, they know that sometimes it takes a little time to find it, and you need a little room to play, and you need a little room to make a mistake or be too big or be too small or whatever this sort of moment is. They trust that it takes a little time to get to the end result.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you know what I mean? They just let it, or they're able to say, do you want to do them? You want to just do it back to back and we won't cut. Like they just sort of understand sort of small shorthands about.
They know it's going to evolve over time. And that's a very good point.
And both Lizzie and Brad, they always give you that freebie, or however many freebies you want, so now that we've done.
Do whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Which is, the dream, which is what you want. You want that space to breathe, to do what is in your soul, your mind, your heart.
It was a little surreal having Brad directing the proposal scene, though, I will say.
It was what, hon?
A little surreal, a little odd.
Yeah. I just remembered looking at him thinking, are you kidding me? The things that were coming out of his mouth. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how actors step in the place of directing and then step out and play the role. I don't know how that's done, but they are both certainly beautifully able to do it.
The show features such incredible female talent on screen, but also behind the camera. I think, when dealing with such sensitive subject matter, focused so much on the rights of women. What's it like to be on a set that utilizes and celebrates so many amazing women, in front of the camera and behind the camera?
It's made for a really detailed, I think, experience. It's I don't know how. I don't think I'm the right one to answer this, but the first thing that came to my mind was sort of that really thoughtful, detailed experience, and the allowance to have the more sort of in-depth conversations. I'll stop there. Someone else should take over.
No, I think that's a very good point. The things that need talking about are clear.
Yes.
Which is a very helpful thing. And you don't have to explain quite so much. I don't know. It's what you hope for. Nothing wrong with our men either. But it's been wonderful to have women. Very good. All right, someone else.
I said it.
And forgive me for not knowing. I'm not sure if you've already shot season 6. I assume you have.
No.
Oh, okay. So
I pitched with our writers 2 weeks ago. So no, we can't go back to work until our writers can go back to work.
As strange as it may sound, I'm sure you have a certain fondness for these characters after all these years of playing them. Do you have your own sort of dream scenario for how this might play out for them?
I have one sort of stupid one for Naomi, which is that I kind of hope it's kind of hot between her and the commander. Do you know what I mean? There's sort of a surprise, they're sort of into each other. And maybe that'll just be deep in my mind and I'll just sort of play it secretly. I'm sure it won't get written, but I do sort of hope it's I don't know, kind of spicy.
Funny you say that, because in a weird way, I'm kind of rooting for them.
Yeah.
It's so insane. It's so insane. And God knows Naomi could use a little spice. So we'll see.
It's funny.
Anyone else?
I'm very curious about what the writers are going to do. I think about how when Lizzie and I finally come together, because June and Lydia will need to meet in season 6. And it's such a complicated relationship, and that she's been away for so long. What's going to happen between them? I'm just so I can't wait to find out how that plays out.
I hadn't thought about that. It's been a while since they've been face to face.
And there's a lot they have to say to one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that for sure.
Yvonne?
I find this question so hard to answer.
Sure. Well, you also probably don't want to give anything away. I don't even know if you know anything, though.
I do know, actually. I did ask them. I went in and I asked them what the trajectory.
You did? I never asked. I kind of
did. You are brave. Tell us everything.
Yeah, what happens? Is it hot between Naomi? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I like to know. I like to know the lay of the land because there's so many twists and turns and there's so many, ups and downs. And I kind of want to know where, I find the baseline and all of that. So I can kind of get a better handle on it all and create that emotional roller coaster. But I don't know. I mean, I think I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it'd be great to see Serena, come round and be on the good side. I don't know. I don't know if I feel the same way. Not because I want her to remain on the bad side, but because I kind of want her to get what she deserves in a lot of ways. And we did touch on that in season 5. We did touch on that because, living with the Wheelers and having nowhere to go, birthing a baby in a barn, and it was just almost like endgame for her. Like she really hit rock bottom, and she has, look at her now where we ended off. So I don't know. I think I'm a little bit, I think I would feel satisfied, even though, she's kind of like my best friend because she lives and breathes in me in that way. I still want to have her, have what she deserves, which isn't good. If that makes sense.
Well, again, I can't wait to see what happens. It's such a fantastic show. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your experiences and processes with teleperformers.
Thank you.
Thank you.